I was stationed in Sioux City. I came here after graduating from Bombardier School as a second lieutenant, and they put together a B-17 cruise here to send you overseas. It was a dry town, but there were a lot of bars that were rode all night. And it was a lot of fun to be stationed in this town, I'll tell you that. And they used to know when they were going to be raided. I was in a bar that we went to while I was stationed here, and one day in which the bartender said, "Lieutenant, will you take these 4 bottles of whiskey and leave and come back in about an hour?" and an hour later, they were open. Shortly after I got here, I saw an ad in the paper for tryouts for the community theater. They were going to start a community theater, and I thought, I'm interested in that. The tryouts were at the Board of Education building on Pierce Street. I went down, looked in the door, and looked over the crowd that was there and thought, I think I could fit in here. A number of the people that were around at that time are now in the big theater in the sky. Helene Shinsopa, who was probably one of the finest actresses that the theater has had, and Dale Fairweather, Evelyn Nagelstead, Florence Butler are all gone now. The third show, we finally found a place to do theater that we could stay at, not all the time. It was the Knights of Pythias Hall, a little white church-looking building that was opposite the old public library on Jackson Street. We moved from there to Bancroft School, the school by Keelan High School, and that was another small stage. And finally, we decided to have our own theater away from the city, and put together a board of directors and rented the Hip Theater on what was then known as Lower 4th Street, is now historic 4th Street, and had been there for a number of years empty. And we redid the theater and put in seats and cleaned it all up and got ready to go. And there was a flood, that big flood back in '52, I think that was, that went across 4th Street, actually. And we had to start all over again. There were not a lot of us, actually, at that time. There were probably about 10 or 11 people that were that active that would go down there and do all those things, that put together the board. The board was all the workers in the theater and all the actors in the theater at that time. And so we did a number of plays there before we went to, then we graduated. We went uptown to the Victory Theater, and we redid that one as much as we could. But what happened with that theater was that we figured we were going to buy the theater. It might be better than leasing it. And somebody thought, well, we better have the theater inspected to make sure that it's worth what they're asking for it. And somebody said they knew somebody from the city who could inspect the building and let us know. And we said, let's get him. And he did that. He inspected the building and did let us know that he red tagged the building, which meant we had no home at all now. For 2 years, Blessed Sacrament was kind enough to lend us their stage to do theaters before we came out to Shore Acres. Tyrone Power, Raymond Massey, and Judith Anderson. They played at the Orpheum, and the theater sponsored that show. There's a picture of the 3 of them sitting in a Warrior Hotel. Charles Lawton was here also, and Sharon Farrell was in a play at the community theater. When the television station opened, or was being built and was opening, somebody from that who knew me wanted to know if I knew anybody at the community theater that might want to do a children's show, some retired person And they think at that time, you could still remember Uncle Don, who did it on the radio at that time. I think that's what they had in mind. And I talked to people at the theater, and there wasn't anybody that was interested in doing that. And somewhere along the line, they asked me if, someone asked me if I'd be interested in doing that, or could I do that? And I thought at the time, well, this is all new to these people that are putting it together. They really don't know that much more about it than I do. Sure, I can do that. So I went home to make up a children's show. And I thought the children's show should be a clubhouse. And that kids would come in for their meeting each week or each day. And, but they needed a president of the club, and I would be like the president of the club. And I don't know where it came from, but Canyun. And I thought, well, Canyun Kid. We had about 20 children a day coming into the show, and we had them booked well in advance anymore. It was your birthday, you came to the show. Every station, local station at that time, eventually had a children's show. There are very few of those anymore.